So it is finals week, like I said, and we have two options for your final. If you're not a fan of taking tests, we're going to talk about your second option, which is the poster project. So if you are thinking about doing the poster, we're going to look at this rubric together and just talk about what should be on your poster and how I'm going to grade it. So with this rubric, you will be able to tell about what grade you're going to get on the final based off of how you follow this. So the first thing that we are looking at is a unit title and overview. Basically, you will decide one unit that we covered, so you can either talk about equations, you could talk about inequalities, you could talk about positive and negative rules. You could talk about anything that you can think of that is a topic that we have covered. So you will earn a perfect 10 in this category if your poster has a clear title written at the top, it's easy to see, easy to read, and that you have described your topic using 3 sentences, and it's explaining all of the things about it. You'll get 8 points if there's a title there, but it's not clear, and maybe your summary of the topic is not as great. 6 points for all of these things. Your title is there, but it's maybe too small, it's not able to be read, and then your summary doesn't give a lot of detail. You would only get 4 points if you don't have a title, or if your title is incorrect, or if your summary, you didn't write a summary, or maybe your summary does not explain the topic your poster covers. So the next category that your poster should include is vocabulary or symbols. So those are just some of the mathematical words and terms and symbols that we learned about while in pre-algebra. It could be something as simple as explaining the plus sign, the minus sign, multiplication, division symbols, the less than symbol, greater than, all of the different things that you can think of in that unit. You need to have at least 5 of these terms that are being explained on your poster, making sure that you give the correct definition and that you explain them well. And the less terms that you include, the less points you will receive. So the third thing on your poster will be example problems. So for example, if you decided to do a poster about equations, you would need to make sure you have at least 3 equations written on your poster that are worked out step by step and explained correctly and clearly. And that is how to get your 10 points. Those points will decrease the less problems you include or if problems are worked out incorrectly. The next category is visuals and diagrams. I just want you to have at least 2 good labeled visuals. Visuals could be a picture, a drawing. If you were doing an inequality, for example, a picture could be the graph that you draw. It doesn't necessarily have to be something like a graph. It could just be a photo that helps explain the topic. But I want 2 of them on there. And the points decrease with the less visuals on the poster, etc., etc. And then the last category is just neatness and organization. Basically, your poster should be organized. It should be easy to read, visually appealing. I can read everything nicely. It helps me understand whatever topic you cover in your poster, and all of that. And the less organized and neat it is less points, as you can read on our rubric. So this is a total score of 60 points on your grade. And you can get up to 2 bonus points for showing extra effort, creativity, or just going above and beyond and doing more than I'm asking for. So this is the poster option. Before we look at the practice final, does anyone have any questions about the poster? Yes?
So you're saying one of those out of the categories or all of them?
All of them. So we'll need to make sure that your poster has all of these. Now let's say that you're not necessarily worried about getting a perfect 60 out of 60. You could then go over and say, well, maybe I don't want to draw a bunch of pictures. I could bear to lose a few points, you know. So you can kind of decide what grade you will get based off of what you choose. Like if I decided I don't want to add visuals, that means you would get a 4 out of 10 in this category, and you would still be getting 4 points for making the poster, but it would just take away a few points from the overall grade that you could get. So basically, if you follow everything down the 10-point category, you'll get 100%. If you followed everything down the 8-point category, you would get a B, an 80%. If you follow everything down the 6-point category, that would be a 60%. That'd be a D. So as you get lower, that would be a lower score. It really is up to you and how much effort you want to put into each category. So if you choose to do a poster, instead of turning in a practice final, like you will if you'll do the written final, you will be turning in a rough draft, which would basically be a miniature version of what you want your poster to look like. You would just write it out on a smaller piece of paper, and you could show it to me, and I could give you the okay that, all right, that looks good. Now you can work on your big poster. This is all we will be doing this week, is going over our practice final and working on our final posters, if that's what you decide to do. Do we have any other questions about the poster? Any other questions? Okay. Now we can come back to the poster if any other questions do pop up in your heads. But for now, we're going to look at the practice final together. And I am going to address a few things that you'll notice on the practice final, because there are some things on here that we have not gone over as a class yet, and we will be using this week to go over a few of those things. So I have the practice final in front of me, and I am just going to kind of slowly talk about each of the pages, and then just like we would on a practice quiz, I'm going to explain how to solve everything on here for you. So on the practice final, the first page, there will be 4 equations that you will solve. Flipping to page 2, there will be 2 more equations you'll solve, and then that is it for equations. Moving on, you will have 2 inequalities that you will solve and graph. And then you will have a compound inequality that you will solve and graph. That's on page 2. Now page 3, this is the last page, and this is the new stuff we have not gotten a chance to talk about. So we're going to talk about this a little bit this week. And page 4, this is optional. These are bonus points. I will show you how to do these problems. However, if you decide you don't want to attempt, you do not have to. But, you know, if you try and you don't get it right, it won't hurt your grade. So it's never a bad idea to try. So before we go over the things that we do know how to do, let's look at page 3. This is some newer stuff. We're going to look at page 3. This is the newer stuff. So on page 3 of the practice final, you will see that there are some dots on a grid. Okay, I'm going to give you names for these. These little dots are what we call coordinates. A coordinate tells you where a point is on what we call a graph. So this is our graph. The way that we name a coordinate is by giving it two numbers. We will have a parentheses like this, and in the first spot of the parentheses, we choose a value for x, and in the second spot, we choose a value for y. So, let's talk about how this works. First, we're going to look at point A, our coordinate A. To figure out what number I'm going to put for x, I'm going to start by finding A on my graph, and I want to find the x-axis. The x-axis is going to be the line that goes straight across from left to right. So I'm just going to highlight my x-axis with red to show. Yes.
Why are we doing the x and y? I thought it was 10 through 14.
The x and y for 10 through 14.
Oh, first.
Yes, yes, yes. We're just going to look at the x part first. So we're just looking at number 10, point A. So for point A, to find my value for x, I am going to start at my point, and I am going to see where does A line up on the x-axis. So I'm going to start here and draw a line down, and I'll see what number does A line up with on the x-axis. What number does it line up with? 2. So my x value for A is 2. Hello, hello. So now that we've found the value for x for A, let's now look at all the x values for the other points. So I found my x. Let's look at B now for number 11. Where would B line up with on the x-axis? 5. Good. We'll draw a line and see that it's going to go through 5. So for B, my x value is 5. Now we're going to look at point C. Point C, where does it line up on the x-axis? -3. Good. So C lines up with -3. Now let's look at point D. Same one. It also lines up with -3. Okay, and now point E, where does it line up with? Also -3. Good. So to find your first number in your parentheses, we are going to trace from our point either up to the x-axis, or we will go down to the x-axis. We're going to trace up or down to find our x value. So I'll make a little note of that. To find the x value, trace up or down to see where the point lines up on the x-axis. Okay, so anytime we have a point and we want to find the x value, we just trace up or down and see where does it touch the x-axis. So the x-axis, remember, that's the line that goes across here, and it will be labeled with an X. That way we know which is which. So now that we have our x's labeled, we're going to look for our y values. The y-axis is right here. The y-axis goes up and down like this. So now we just need to see where do each of these points line up with the y-axis. So let's start with point A. For x value, I would go down to see that it lands on 2. Where do you think I would go to find the y value? Over to the left. So I'm going to trace over, and what would my y value be for A?
-5.
So this is a little confusing because of this. This is a tick mark. It's actually +5. The tick mark makes it look like a negative sign, but whenever we have our numbers on the y-axis above, these are all positive numbers. The negative numbers are going to be below. We see that difference there. So this will be +5. Okay, so that's where we found A. We see A lines up with 2 on the x-axis. There's our 2. It lines up with 5 on the y-axis. There's our 5. How about point B? Yes, I'm going to trace over and see that it lands on -2 on the y-axis. So B is -2 for y. So now let's look at point C. Where does it line up with on the y-axis? 5. We'll trace over to the y-axis, and it does line up with 5. There we go. How about point D? -4. Good. -4. And last one, point E. 2. Right there. So these are all of our points, our coordinates. All we do is see where does the point line up with the x-axis. That's our value for x. And then where does it line up with the y-axis. So if we wanted to make another note like we did for x, this is optional, but I'm going to write it just in case. So to find the y value, we trace left or right. So to find the y value, trace left or right to see where the point lines up on the y-axis. Okay. So this is how we name coordinates. And I know this is the very first time that we have looked at this together as a class, so if this part of the final worries you, we can have lots of practice before you take it. It is no big deal. Please also remember that when you take the final, you can make corrections. So if you mess one little number up, it's no big deal. You can fix it as long as it's before Friday. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about numbers 10 through 14? Any questions at all? Okay. Now I don't want to move my paper down if anyone is still writing. Can I move this, or does anyone need a little more time? Okay, I'll wait just a moment. I'll go ahead and pause our video and let people finish up. Okay, so there's our coordinates, and moving on, now I have these last two questions, and these are also things we have not talked about, but I think that you will find this is very simple. So we have below what is called a linear equation. Okay, we know what an equation is, but we haven't talked about linear equations. Basically what a linear equation is it is an equation that can be put on a graph that will have a slope, which tells us how steep that line is going to be, and then a y-intercept. That just tells us where does the line touch the y-axis. That sounds really crazy and complicated, but I promise you it's not. We just need to figure out what is the slope, what is the y-intercept. Here's how we find the slope. Our slope is always going to be the number next to x. What's the number next to x? 2. That's your answer. Easy peasy. No work needed. Your y-intercept is always the number at the end of the equation. What's the number at the end? 3. That's it. So we'll make a note to help us remember. 2. I'm going to write the slope is the number next to x. And the y-intercept is the number at the end. So that's all you have to do for 15 and 16 is see what's the number next to x, what's the number at the end, and then you write them down. This is just a little sneak peek into algebra. But that's all you do there. So I'll let you guys have a moment to copy those notes down if anyone is doing that. I would highly recommend writing these on your practice final if you are taking the practice, or if you're taking the final, because you can use this on your final. So it will be helpful. I see lots of people still writing, so I will wait just a minute. Does anybody still need anything on page 3? You do? Okay, I will wait then. I'll pause it again. So that was the third page. We started out of order, but I wanted to just show this to you first since it was new. Once we finish the practice final, if any of you would like more review on this topic, we can do that, 100% absolutely. So we're going to actually go ahead back to the beginning of the practice final and start from page 1. Now, if you are working on this at your own pace, that is fine with me. You don't necessarily have to follow along, but it's never a bad idea just to make sure that you're getting everything written down correctly. So, on the first page, we are solving equations. And I think it's always a good idea to keep little notes to help us remember different things that we might need to remember on the final. First of all, when we solve equations, we are using inverse operations. So, just as a little reminder to ourselves, we can make a little note of those. What is the opposite of addition? Subtraction. What's the opposite of multiplication? Division. Good. This is also the order that we solve equations in. We want to get rid of addition and subtraction first. Multiplication and division second. Unless, of course, it's one of those exception problems, like with a big fraction or parentheses. So, number 1, I have n over 5 equals 5. N over 5, what operation is happening there? Yes, so this is division. To get rid of it, we multiply. Times 5 times 5. My 5's cancel. Good, my n is by itself. Equals 5 times 5 is 25. And then we circle our answer. So we'll get n equals 25 for number 1. Good. Now number 2, I have negative 3n equals 36. What operation is happening here? We're going to divide because this is multiplication. What will we divide by?
3 on both sides.
We'll divide by 3. Now, not just 3, but negative 3. Good. Good. So I divided by negative 3 on both sides. Good. My 3's cancel. N equals negative 12. Good. Good. So these were 2 one-step equations. We just had to do one operation there and we had our answer. So if you're somebody that likes to label things, I guess you could put to the side that these are one step. It will be just like this on the final. Yes.
Why did we do divide by negative 3 instead of dividing by 3?
Because we started with negative 3 times n. If I divide by positive 3, then I would be left with this. Let me get a sticky note. I'll show you. So I have negative 3 n equals 36. If I divide by positive 3, here's what would happen. I would cancel my 3's out, but I would still have a negative left over. So I would have negative n equals 36 divided by 3 is positive 12. So you could do that, but you would just have to remember to bring your negative over to the 12 so that it becomes n equals negative 12. So you can do positive 3. You would just have one extra step to do at the end. Does that help? Okay, good. All right. Do we have any other questions about 1 or 2?
Can you go over number 2 again, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So number 2, one more time, I'm going to write it out. We have negative 3n equals 36. So when I have a number next to n, it means we're multiplying. I have -3 times n. I want to get n by itself, so it means I need to get rid of -3. Since it's -3 times n, we're going to do the opposite of times, which is divide. So I will divide by -3 over here to get rid of it. And whatever I do to one side, I need to do it to the other as well. So I divided by -3. Those cancel. And I'm left with n by itself. Then I brought my equal sign down. Then I just solved the rest of the problem on the other side of the equal sign. Now I have 36 divided by -3, which is -12. And that is our answer. Okay. Does that help clear it up a little bit? Okay, good. All right. Let's go ahead and look at number 3 now. So now we are looking at two-step equations. And this is where we need to be careful about what order we do things in. So remember, like I had written above here, we want to get rid of addition and subtraction first, then multiplication and division. So for number 3, I have -4 times n plus 8 equals 24. What should I get rid of first? The 8. Good. So since it's plus 8, we'll do the opposite. -8. And we'll draw our line. What happens to my 8s? They cancel. Good. Now what do I bring down? Good. -4n equals, yes, 24 minus 8 is 16. And now I'm left with -4 times n equals 16. Yes, we want to get rid of -4, so we divide by -4 on both sides. We'll draw a line. Good, we'll cancel our 4's. Yes, we'll bring down n equals 16 divided by -4 is -4. There we go. Cracking me up. Okay. Do we have any questions, or is there any part of this that needs to be repeated or explained better? Okay. Ready for number 4? Okay, let's look at number 4, our second two-step equation. Now I have n divided by 3 plus 5 equals 10. Yes, we have plus 5 that we're going to get rid of. We'll do -5. Okay. My 5's will cancel. Good. So we'll bring everything down. N divided by 3 equals 10 minus 5 is 5. Say that one more time.
Multiply by 3.
Yes. Good. So I have n divided by 3. We want to do the opposite of divide, which is multiply.
Your 3 cancel.
Good. My 3's will cancel.
Your n equals 15.
Good. My n equals 5 times 3, 15. Good, good, good.
That's where I have a problem is my mistake is put 3 times 3 on both sides, and I'll put, I think I'm supposed to work that out.
Right, and you'll
3
have like
times 3.
9 written
Yeah.
under. Yep, yep, I totally get it. What might be a good idea to help you not do that, I wonder if it would be helpful to, like, as soon as you write, I'm going to rewrite that n over 3 equals 5. As soon as I say, like, okay, I need to get rid of this 3, so divide by 3, I'm going to times 3. Maybe just cross it off right away. And then write the times 3. Because that way, we don't accidentally go back and do n over 9, you know, because that is something that is super easy to get mixed up on. It's so easy to mix it up. So maybe just try as soon as you write it, cross it off immediately, and then write it on the other side. That might help us remember not to actually use it. Okay. Do we have any questions on the first page? Okay, does anyone need to see this work still? Or can we go to the second page? Yes? Move it? No? Okay, I'm gonna move it. Okie dokie. Page 2, we have 2 more equations, and then we move to inequalities. So, number 5 and 6, these are exceptions to the rule of doing doing addition and subtraction first. So on number 5, I have n plus 4 divided by 5 equals 3. Yes, this time I want to multiply first because it's a fraction. We cannot touch anything on top of the fraction until we get rid of the bottom. So, since that's divided by 5, we do times 5. And I'll just cross it off right away. And we do it on both sides. So,
Bring n plus 4 equals 15.
good. So I'm just going to bring that down. N plus 4 equals 3 times 5 is 15.
Minus 4.
Good. Then we subtract 4.
4 cancel.
My 4's will cancel.
N equals 11.
Perfect. N equals 15 minus 4 is 11. Okay. There's number 5. So on number 5, if you are taking the final and think, I might forget that, might not be a bad idea to write a little note that says, multiply first here. Okay, do we have any questions on number 5? Okay, are we ready to look at number 6? Okay, number 6, there are 2 ways to solve this one. What is one way that we could start number 6? We could start by distributing. Now, if we distribute, we need to be careful because I have some negative numbers in here. So, because I have a positive number multiplied by a negative number, Am I going to have a positive product or a negative product? Negative. Positive and a negative make a negative. So,
3 times negative 4 is negative 12n.
good. So 3 times negative 4n gives us negative 12n. And I'll bring down my minus sign. And 3 times 4 is?
Negative 4.
Did you say
Negative 12.
12? Yes, 12. Good. So negative 12n minus 12
Equals 24.
equals 24. Okay. So on this one, I'm going to write distribute first. And then we'll talk about the other way that we could solve this next. But for now, we've got the distribution first. And that leaves me with a whole new equation. Negative 12 times n minus 12 equals 24. So, now we're back to our normal rules where we add and subtract first, then multiply, divide. What should I do first?
You add 12 on each side.
Good. I want to get rid of this minus 12. We'll do plus 12 on both sides. And then we'll draw a line. What happens to my 12s?
And negative 12, they cancel.
These cancel.
And then negative 12 each equals.
Good. We'll bring this down. Negative 12
36.
n equals, yep, 24 plus 12. That is 36. And there's one last step here. Divide. Good. Divide by negative 12 on both sides. And what happens?
Your 12 cancel.
My 12s cancel, leaving me with
Your
n
negative 3.
equals, yes, 36 divided by negative 12 is negative 3. There we go. So that's one way to solve number 6. And right below it, I'm going to show, well, actually, I'll do it right beside it.
So can I ask you a question?
Yes,
So this one is also called a
multi-step. This one would be a multi-step equation because we have 1 step, 2 step, 3 step. There's 3 steps here. This one has 1, 2 steps, but it's still a little different. So I'm going to write, yeah.
but the rule still applies that the addition, I think it's what's getting me sometimes, that subtraction turns into addition.
Yes, yes. That will never change when we're solving.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, so I will show one more way to solve number 6 in case you don't like using distribution. So I'm just going to rewrite the problem. We have 3 times negative 4n minus 4 equals 24. Okay, so what if I don't want to distribute? What could I do instead as my first step?
You're gonna divide.
Divide. I could divide by 3 to get rid of it. So let's divide by 3. So what happens to my 3's over here? They cancel. And then we want to bring everything down. So what's left on this side?
Negative 4n minus 4.
Good. Negative 4n minus 4 equals 24 divided by 3 is 8. So now I have negative 4n minus 4 equals 8.
You add 4 on each grade.
Good. We'll add 4 to both sides. My negative 4n comes down, equals comes down. 8 plus 4 is 12.
Divide by -4.
Perfect. Divide by -4. And you should get the same answer, which we do. So I'll get n equals -3. Both ways work. It's just up to you which one you do. So you could either distribute first or you could divide first. And I will just write on here, this is for problem number 6, in case I lose this sticky note. So there's 2 ways to do number 6. Okay, do we have any questions on either of those? All right. See some of us still writing. I'll pause it for a minute, let everybody get caught up. All right. Let's go ahead and move on. I'm just going to move that up a little. And let's start looking at our inequalities now. So, remember, inequalities, solving them is just like solving an equation. Exactly the same. The only thing that's different is we graph it afterwards. So let's look at number 7. And I have 6 times 4 plus n is less than or equal to -30. So what should I do first?
Distribute.
We can distribute, absolutely. This is just like number 6 as well. You could also divide. Both ways will work. So 6 times 4, what's that? 24 plus 6 times, yes, 6n is less than or equal to -30.
You add 24.
Yes, we're going to add, ooh, do we add 24? Minus 24. I almost wrote that wrong. Good, minus 24, because that's a positive 24. Minus 24. Okay. So what happens at this step? Good, my 24s cancel. We'll bring down 6 times n. Good, less than or equal to -54. Good. Okay, one last step.
You divide by 6.
Divide by 6. My 6's cancel.
Then n is less than or equal to
-9. -9. Very good. N is less than or equal to -9. So we would circle our answer, and then we would move on to graphing. So I'm going to give us a little guide for graphing on here, just as a refresher. Might not be a bad note to take on your practice final, but optional, of course. So once you've solved your inequality, the next thing we do is we put the number above the tick mark. After that, we decide Should we have an open circle or a closed circle? How do I know if it's an open circle versus a closed circle?
The open circle, what you have line underneath it.
Yes, my open circle would be shown with a symbol that is either less than or greater than. My shaded circle would be less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. So you're really just looking for that line on the bottom. So I'll go ahead and write my number, -9. Do I shade my circle or leave it open? Shade it. We have less than or equal to here, so we shade it. Now on your final, if this is what you decide to do instead of the poster, please make your answers on your graph obvious. Don't do a teeny tiny circle that I can't tell if it's open or closed. Make it really obvious what your answer is trying to show me. And what's the last thing that we need to decide?
Shade to the left.
Yes, the shading directions. So, because it is less than or equal to, my sign is pointing, if I made it an arrow, to the left. So we shade to the left. So, less than or equal to, that's when we shade this way. My greater than or equal to, we shade this way. Okay, so that would be the graph for number 7. And do we have any questions about that one? Okay. All right, can we look at number 8, or does anyone still need more time? Okay, we're going to go ahead and look at number 8 then. I have -3 plus 5n is greater than 12. How should I solve this one? Good. We'll start with +3 on both sides. 3's cancel.
Bring down your 5n.
Mm-hmm.
And the greater than sign is 15.
Yes, 5n is greater than 15.
And you divide by 5 on each side.
Good. Divide by 5.
5 cancel. Bring down your n is greater than 3.
N is greater than 3. Good. Good, good, good. Okay, so now let's graph it. What's
And you circle it.
mm-hmm.
Put your 3 on top. And shade it to the right.
Yes, my greater than points to the right.
And it stays open.
And it stays open. Very good. Very good. Okay. Any questions about number 8? Awesome. Awesome, awesome. All right. Next, we're going to look at 9. And I will move this up in case anyone is still looking at previous problems. So for number 9, now we have a compound inequality, okay? And this is an and inequality. What do we know about how the shading should look on an and compound inequality?
No.
In the middle or out?
In the middle.
Ooh, in the middle. So if it's and,
No, it's on the outside.
and, it's and inside, or would be outside. So here's a little key for us. If we have an or on the quiz or on the final, just to show. And it's just a way to double check your answer. Or will be facing out and will be facing in. Just a way to look. But this is an and inequality. So let's solve these one at a time. So I have my first inequality, negative 10 plus 5 times n is less than or equal to 15.
You add 10 on the side.
Good, let's add 10 to each side. 10's cancel.
And your 5 in is less than or equal to 25.
Good, so I bring everything down. 5n is less than or equal to 25. And we don't need that plus anymore because there's nothing that I'm adding to 5n anymore. So we don't need to bring that down.
You divide by 5.
Perfect. Then I divide by 5.
5 cancels.
N is less than or equal to 5. Now, we don't want to graph it just yet because we need to figure out which number goes on which tick mark. We have 2 answers. So we've got n is less than or equal to 5, and we'll just keep that there and move on to solving the next one. So I'm going to put a sticky note over this so that I can actually see my work. 5 plus 8n is greater than negative 75. Okay, so let's look at this one now. What should I do first? Good, let's subtract 5. Good, 8n is greater than negative 80.
Then you divide by 8.
Divide by 8. 8's cancel. N is greater than negative 10. And that is my answer. So now I have my 2 inequalities solved. And I'm going to chop that. There we go. I have n is less than or equal to 5 and n is greater than negative 10. So which of these numbers am I going to put on my line first?
Negative 10,
Negative 10. Why?
because on the graph, the 10 comes first, negative 10.
Yes. The smaller number should come first. Negative 10 is smaller. So negative 10 will go here.
It'll be an open circle.
Yes, and 5 will go here. Yep, then we look at the sign. It's greater than, not equal to, so we keep the circle open.
And circle under the 5 is closed.
5 is closed, correct.
And you shade in the middle.
And we shade in the middle. I can see that my arrows, if I made arrows out of the symbols, point at each other. So we're going to shade in the middle. And that would be our graph. That's our graph. Okay. So that is everything on the first 2 pages. And then of course we started with page 3 because that was newer stuff. I'm happy to get some practice problems for that 3rd page since that is newer content. And we can absolutely review more of that together later on. But before I go to the bonus question, does anybody have questions about anything we've done so far?
So far, so good.
So far, so good? Okay, awesome. Well, I'm going to move my paper unless anyone needs it still. So now I'm going to flip to page 4. These are bonus points. You don't have to do them, but it is, you know, good practice and good to give it a go if you want some bonus points. So this is graphing a line. It sounds scary, but it's not too bad if we break it down and look at it slowly. So if we remember back to page 3, we learned how to find the slope and the y-intercept. The slope is the number next to x. The y-intercept is the number at the end. So on our bonus questions, that's going to be the first thing we look for, the slope and the y-intercept. So for the first problem, I'm going to look at the number next to x. In this case, it's a fraction, which is fine. 3/4. 3/4 is the number next to x. So what is my slope? 3/4. 3/4, that's my slope. And what is my y-intercept? -2. So we'd say -2 or -2. So we have our slope, we have our y-intercept. There we go. Just doing this part will give you bonus points. Even if you're not confident about the graph, if you can at least get the slope and the y-intercept, you can get some bonus points. So now I'm going to show you how to graph a line. I'm going to give you some steps. Okay, so step 1 is to graph the y-intercept. Whatever the number is, in this case -2 is the y-intercept, we're going to find that spot on the y-axis and we're going to make a point. So I'm going to draw a little picture here of the y-axis. And I'm just going to make a little point on it, because the y-axis goes up and down. So if my y-intercept is -2, I'm going to go over to my graph and I am going to write some numbers. So right here in the middle, this is 0. My y-axis is the line that goes straight up and down. That's my y-axis. The x-axis goes left to right. You might be thinking that it is up and down because, so here's the x-axis, it's left to right, but to find where a point goes on the x-axis, we trace up and down. You see that? So like if I wanted to find the x point that A lands on, I go down and it's 2 on the x-axis. So the axis is actually this line, but the direction we go is up and down to touch it, if that makes sense. It's new stuff. We can go over it some more as we go on. It's new stuff. So here's our y-axis. This is 0. Our positive numbers go up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'll label those. And my negative numbers go down. -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, -7. So, to graph the y-intercept, I need to find where is -2 on the y-axis. Is it above the line or below the line? Below, good. So I'm going to go down to -2. And that is my first point. After that, and I know we're almost out of time. I'll finish this one. I'll let you go. That's our first step. The second step is we are going to use the slope to find another point. So use the slope to find a second point. And here's how we do it. Slope can be referred to as what we would call rise over run. And I will explain what that means. If slope is rise over run, and on this problem my slope is 3 over 4, that means that my rise is 3 and my run is 4. Rise means go up, run means go over. So, here's what we do. From the first point that I put right here, first I'm going to use my rise. My rise is 3. So, I'm going to rise up 3 spaces. I'll go up 1, 2, 3. That was my rise. So I went up 3. And since my run is 4, now I'm going to go over 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this will be my second point. You see that? Now I have 2 points. And all that would be left to do is take a ruler and connect your dots. And you have a line. We graphed a line. We graphed a line.
I think you divide 3 by 4.
3 by 4?
0.75.
0.75, yes, that could be. You could also call your slope 0.75. That would be the same as 3 over 4. Absolutely. That could work. But I think sometimes using the fraction will make it a little bit easier to find another point. It just depends. Okay. All right. That was a lot of new stuff today, guys. So this is a bonus point. We can talk more about it throughout the week. You have all the way until Friday to take the final, to retake it, to make corrections. You also can decide if you don't want to take the final, you can make a poster instead. That is fine with me. Those are your two options. We can take the final, or you can make your poster using that rubric. Anywho, it is 1:58. Class ends in 2 minutes. We will finish talking about this tomorrow. If you decide you want to take this tomorrow, you are welcome to. If you decide that you want to make a poster, that's what you can use our class time for, is working on that poster. Completely up to each and every one of you. But start thinking about which one you want to do so that you can tell me for sure tomorrow. And that is it. You can hold on to it. Hold on to it. Put it in your folder. But that's all, you guys. I'm going to end our recording, and you are free to go.